My mother claimed she raised us post-divorce, but I was the child who took charge. My mother insists she was the one who raised us after the divorce, but I was the child who handled cooking, cleaning, and essentially raised myself. At my baby shower, I called out her false narrative. I'm keeping this straightforward, without embellishments or headings, because I value the raw, honest posts I see here, where people share facts and seek advice or judgment. My parents split when I was 6, and the way time was split shaped everything that followed. My father took care of finances, school forms, and transportation, keeping our routines steady. I spent much of my time with him, helping with homework, sports, grocery runs, laundry, and meals, all done quietly without grand gestures. My mother, however, said the divorce shattered her because of my father's infidelity, and she needed time for herself and her social circle. She refused to stay home alone, claiming she deserved a life. When I was at her place, she'd leave in the evenings, and I'd look after my 4-year-old brother. I'd check his needs for the next day, move laundry, pick out clothes, cook, and ensure our backpacks were ready. By age 14, I didn't need prompting because no one else was stepping up. My brother, at 10, needed rides, signed papers, lunches, clean clothes, and someone to make sure he slept. My mother would text from bars, saying she'd be back soon, then send another message, then nothing. I learned not to wait up, as staying awake meant starting the next day exhausted, struggling through tests or practice with a foggy mind. So I set alarms, created routines, memorized bus schedules, phone numbers, due dates, locker codes, and notes about field trip payments and clinic hours. My father never spoke ill of my mother or shared his opinions about her actions. I didn't tell him much about her apartment because I feared court battles would change nothing and only make exchanges tenser. I didn't want to stir new conflicts. He paid child support, showed up, and asked if we were okay. I said we were to keep the peace and maintain the system I'd built. When asked about other family members, I explained they were around but couldn't change the custody order. My mother told them she had everything under control, while I was the one managing it all, and no one wanted to disrupt the fragile stability I'd created. I tracked food and money by monitoring prices, checking store ads, and buying what I could cook quickly to keep us fueled for practice and homework. I learned to make simple meals feel substantial. Leaving a pot of rice in the fridge meant I could whip up something decent after late activities without starting from scratch. This wasn't heroic to me, and I'm not writing for praise. It's just what happened, what I had to do to avoid constant crises. I skipped social events because leaving my brother alone at night wasn't an option. I knew what it felt like to wait in a silent house, counting minutes, and I wouldn't put him through that. When college came up, I said I couldn't leave because my brother still needed daily support. My father offered to push for more custody time, but I said court fights might not change anything. I took community college classes, worked nearby, and kept things stable until my brother was older, had a license, and stayed mostly at our father's. Then I moved into a small apartment with a roommate and started focusing on myself. I carried habits from those years, but began to relax, no longer watching the door for my mother or budgeting for meals and supplies until the next support payment. Fast forward to now. I'm pregnant, and my partner and I planned a baby shower for both families. I thought we could keep it drama-free, focusing on the baby, diapers, and gear. I told the friend hosting that we wanted no speeches, toasts, or microphone moments. We set a short time frame, and things went smoothly for most of the event. My parents were in the same room, not interacting, which was fine since the goal was a peaceful gathering. Near the end, my mother started telling a group how she single-handedly raised 2 kids after my father's affair left her broken. She spoke loudly, scanning the room, and continued. My father, nearby, stayed silent. I saw people nodding, and I knew staying quiet would mean endorsing a false version of my life that erased countless nights, my work, and my father's support. I quickly decided. Either I speak up now or spend years correcting her story in private. I chose to interrupt, stating clearly that I raised myself and my brother during her custody time, and my father never abandoned us, paying support and showing up. I said anyone curious about who cooked, signed forms, arranged rides, called bus lines, visited clinics, met teachers, and ensured food was on the table could ask me. I declared I wouldn't let my child grow up hearing a story that credits someone who didn't do the work. My mother called me ungrateful and said I humiliated her. She left with her friends and didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. She texted the next day, saying I'd crossed a line and demanding an apology before she'd talk again. I didn't reply, as apologizing for the truth would set me back, and I needed to focus on preparing for delivery and organizing support for those early weeks. I set a visit schedule, told both parents' visits would be short and by appointment, and banned unapproved baby photos. My father agreed and asked what else we needed. My mother stayed silent. A week before my due date, my mother asked to meet near her place. She said she'd reflected on the shower and admitted her comments were wrong. She confessed to leaving us alone many nights, using bars and friends to cope with the divorce and affair. She said she was depressed, felt hollow, and avoided therapy due to cost and stigma. She asked to be a present grandmother and build trust. I told her I acknowledge her realization, but won't rewrite history. Any role she has will depend on small, consistent actions over time. I said I'm not her therapist or health manager, and she should seek professional help if needed. I set clear visit rules and warned that breaking them would mean a pause. She said she understood, cried, and I didn't comfort her because I'm done with that role. My father visited with supplies and asked if I wanted to talk about the shower. I shared details of the meeting with my mother, and he said he felt guilty at the shower because his affair triggered the divorce. He apologized for not pushing harder when he suspected instability at her place, fearing a legal battle would fail and disrupt our lives further. I told him I don't want to rehash past choices every time something happens, and I need him to focus on current needs. He agreed and asked me to tell him if he oversteps out of guilt. I appreciated that, as it showed awareness of patterns I want to avoid, where emotions lead to actions that create more work for me. The shower sparked questions from relatives who'd heard conflicting stories over the years. I told them I'm not punishing my mother, excusing my father, or ranking them. I want a foundation for my child based on real actions, keeping our family free of chaos and blame. I said I'm open to those who show up but closed to those who don't, and anyone pushing for reconciliation to feel better should stop. I'm not doing that work. Update. People asked what happened after the shower, if my brother reached out, and if there was fallout. 2 days later, my brother called, saying he froze during our mother's speech and wished he'd backed me up to shut it down. He emailed her that night, saying he agreed with me, recalling nights I was in charge, and wouldn't tolerate future speeches that erased my efforts. He asked for the postpartum boundaries I'd set so he could enforce them if anyone pushed while I was tired or busy. I shared the schedule, rules about short visits, photo consent, and no posts. He said he'd back me up in any setting. As for fallout, cousins asked my mother for her side, and she called us ungrateful. One cousin sent me a long message saying my mother's finances were tight post-divorce and bars were her social outlet. I replied that socializing is fine, but leaving kids alone nightly isn't, and I'm done discussing it. My father didn't contact my mother or ask me to mediate. He stuck to practical help and let social dynamics play out, which kept me out of the go-between role I refused to take on. In the week after the shower, I finalized birth and first 2 weeks plans with my partner. We created a simple system for meal drop-offs, quiet days with no visitors, and a task list for helpers, written down to avoid miscommunication. People often want to hold the baby and chat, but we needed help with dishes, laundry, trash, or errands like picking up cards or prescriptions. We shared the plan with both families and stuck to it. Those who followed got return invites, those who didn't got fewer slots. It wasn't punishment, it was about protecting our small unit during a tough phase. My mother texted that she'd follow my rules, including no friends, speeches, or unauthorized photos. I asked her to confirm she'd arrive and leave on time and ask before holding the baby. She agreed. I kept conversations short to avoid old grievances that waste time and solve nothing. I wanted interactions with her tied to specific actions I could track. The birth went as expected, with typical labor challenges. We kept the hospital room calm, barring drop-ins. My father visited during designated hours, held the baby, asked what I needed, and went to our house to prep things. My mother came the next day during her slot, brought diapers and wipes, and gave a brief note about wanting to do better. She asked to hold the baby, and I agreed. She held the baby, didn't mention the past or my father, and didn't use her phone without permission. After 20 minutes, she handed the baby back and left so I could rest. It was the first time in years I didn't feel like I was managing her mood or steering the room around her needs. At home, we started our schedule. Visitors came and left on time, doing specific tasks. We kept a fridge log for feedings, diapers, meds, and chores, making it easy to assign tasks without brainstorming while holding a fussy baby. My mother came during her slots, asked what to do, and I assigned laundry, bottle washing, and surface cleaning. She didn't disrupt our routines, offer unsolicited advice, or try to take over baby care. She set a phone timer and left when it went off. I logged each successful visit, evaluating based on data, not hope. Update 2. People asked if I'd do therapy with my mother, push her into treatment, or manage her health. I told her I'd provide therapist names and an intake portal link if she wanted help. That was my limit. I gave her a short list matching her insurance and said she could keep it private or let me know if she scheduled anything. 2 weeks later, she texted that she'd done an intake and attended a session, finding it hard to hear feedback about her patterns. The therapist asked her to reflect on her post-divorce coping and its impact on us, and she realized she'd convinced herself she was our main provider, despite evidence otherwise. I said I heard her and would watch her actions. I also set a childcare rule. Only my father, brother, and 2 close friends can be alone with the baby for now. My mother can visit and help with tasks when I'm present. If she's consistent for months, we'll reassess. She understood and asked to take the stroller for a short walk with me there. I agreed to a block loop together, which went fine. She didn't push for more, which I appreciated, as it would have set us back. Money came up when my mother offered help. I suggested a small monthly transfer to the baby's future account and asked her not to buy items without checking, as space and systems matter more than random gifts. She agreed, set up a transfer, and brought consumables instead of bulky items. During visits, she sometimes reads to the baby while I rest, which is more helpful than grand gestures. I value aid that fits our plan. I told my father not to give my mother leniency due to his affair guilt or praise her progress in ways that pressure me to respond gratefully. He understood, kept comments task-focused, and avoided contacting her to prevent triangulating me. He runs errands, handles rides, and makes small home repairs, logging tasks on our board and moving on, keeping things clean and efficient. Relatives asked if I'd maintain ties with family who have strong opinions about the past, urging quick forgiveness because life is short. I said I'm not in a forgiveness race or counting days to a deadline. I'm running a household with a newborn, aiming for a stable rhythm. Helpers are welcome, disruptors aren't. I'm clear in texts and in person, and I don't argue after stating rules. People adapt or stop coming, I'm okay with either. Update 3. A test of the rules came during a naming ceremony at my partner's family home, where both parents were invited briefly. My partner's family wanted a small event with relatives offering encouragement, a meal, and then leaving. We shared the same visit rules, stating no parental speeches or toasts about the past. My mother asked to give a 1-minute blessing, but I said we're not doing open mics, and she should save words for her own time. At the event, she arrived on time, sat in the back, and helped with food plating instead of mingling with my in-laws to rewrite history. My father arrived on time, sat with my brother, and stayed low-key. Mid-event, a relative praised both parents for raising me, nudging toward a familiar narrative where elders are expected to respond. My mother started to speak, but I gave her a look, shook my head, and said we're keeping the focus on the baby. She stopped and sat down. My father stayed quiet. The moment passed. It felt small but was significant, a pattern that could have derailed didn't. Another test came a week later when my mother arrived 15 minutes late for a visit and asked to stay until the original end time. I said no, as end times matter for naps, feedings, and sanity. She blamed traffic and asked for flexibility. I said traffic is life, and rules are about start and end times. If she wants more time, she must prove consistency first. She left on time without arguing, a data point I noted, as follow-through matters more than promises. People asked if I'll rebuild a closer bond with my mother beyond these visits. I'm not promising that, as I base relationships on actions, not hope. But I've seen small steps. She does tasks without seeking praise, doesn't push for photos, hasn't retold the shower story, started therapy, and avoids fights with my father. I note these while holding my boundaries. My brother has embraced being an uncle, shedding his parentified role. He visits weekends, runs assigned errands, cooks meals, labels containers, and saves us time. He holds the baby, follows instructions, and tells me to rest while he cleans. Seeing him in this role, free of past burdens, is unforgettable. He feels the same and is glad we can share family moments without carrying others' responsibilities. People asked if I'll accept my mother's apology as enough. I said apologies mean nothing without consistent action. I track behavior, not feelings, to avoid emotional fog. I won't raise my child in that haze. Our home will stay predictable, and everyone who wants a role will fit into that system. Now, since this is Reddit and people seek judgment, I'll ask for feedback, not a right or wrong label. I'm considering whether to allow my mother a short solo stroller walk in the coming weeks if she keeps arriving on time and following rules. I'm leaning toward waiting longer, as once she's out with the baby, I can't control what she says or if she takes and shares photos. Rules are harder to enforce outside. I'd rather add in home hours first. Another decision is whether to invite both parents to future kid events like birthdays or school functions or alternate them. I'm inclined to alternate for now, as joint events risk speeches, stories, or side comments, which I want to avoid early on. Update 4. 2 months later, my mother kept her therapy schedule, per what she shared, and arrived on time for most visits. She missed 2, gave notice for 1, but not the other. I didn't reschedule the unnotified miss and pushed her next visit back a week as a consequence, since my time isn't a flexible slot. She accepted it without complaint, and for later visits, arrived early, waiting in her car until the start time, a sign she gets the rules. In the apartment, she took on tasks and didn't manage the baby unless asked. She tried adjusting a swaddle once, but I told her to stop, and she didn't try again. One incident disrupted things. At a family dinner outside our home, my mother told someone nearby she did what she had to after the divorce, and people don't understand betrayal's toll. I overheard, stood up, and said that topic was off limits, and we'd leave if it continued. She said it was just conversation. I clarified that public history discussions break the rules. I took my partner and baby, said goodbye to the host, and left. I emailed her that visits were paused for 2 weeks, and another incident would reset her to 0. She apologized the next day and promised not to repeat it. After the pause, she attended her next slot and followed the rules. My father stayed consistent, not judging my mother's actions or seeking more access than we can give. He avoids atoning for the past with big gestures that create work. Once, while I was feeding the baby, he started mentioning his affair guilt. I said I didn't have time for that discussion and we could revisit it later if needed. He said okay, washed bottles, and dropped it. I've had to remind relatives not to push for photos with both parents. I take separate pictures and don't post or allow posting. When people ask for family photos for memories, I say my child's schedule is my priority, not their album. I don't apologize. I state it clearly and move on. Fewer words prevent arguments from growing. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Stay tuned for more real-life stories. Get more experiences.